Hollywood was rocked by an unprecedented incident when Robert De Niro, one of the greatest actors of all time, was abruptly kicked out of the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio. What began as a routine interview quickly escalated into a fiery confrontation between a silver screen legend and the controversial late-night host. More than just a televised mishap, the incident exposed the dark underbelly rarely seen by the public, where the line between entertainment and disrespect grows increasingly thin. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The stage lights blazed, and the audience's applause roared like thunder. Robert De Niro stepped out, his usual calm demeanor intact as he acknowledged the cheers with a wave. Kimmel flashed his signature wide grin, slapping his thigh in excitement. "All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Robert De Niro, a living legend, a titan of the silver screen. This studio is losing it for you, Bob. You know, just having you walk out here already feels like the full Hollywood experience." "That's right, Robert De Niro. Ladies and gentlemen." De Niro gave a slight nod, his eyes scanning Kimmel and the audience, a fleeting hard-to-read glint in his steady gaze. "Hey Jimmy, thanks for having me." Kimmel didn't waste time, jumping into the first question. "So I hear your new movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, is another masterpiece. Definitely a weighty piece, right Bob? Tell us about it. Working with Martin Scorsese is always a unique experience, isn't it? I bet there are some behind-the-scenes stories we can't even imagine. I'm dying to know." De Niro, still composed but with a sharpening focus in his words, responded, "Yeah, Jimmy, it's a process that demands seriousness and intense focus. We wanted to ensure the story was told as authentically as possible, respecting the history and the people in it. Marty's vision is unmatched." Jimmy Kimmel nodded, feigning admiration for De Niro's insight into the filmmaking process. "Wow, serious and intense focus. That sounds really deep, Robert. Exactly what we'd expect from someone like you. But come on, let's be real." Kimmel continued, his tone shifting to a conspiratorial whisper loud enough for the whole studio to hear. "Everyone knows the real lives of Hollywood stars can be more dramatic than their films, right Bob? Especially when it comes to, well, personal matters. You know what I mean." He winked at the audience, a sly half-smile spreading across his face, then turned back to stare at De Niro. Kimmel's eyes, his suggestive smile, and the way he emphasized personal matters, all were clear signs of a deliberate overstep. Even before arriving, De Niro's team had negotiated extensively with Kimmel's producers, establishing a clear list of off-limits topics, especially anything about his private life. Now Kimmel was blatantly crossing that line, doing so brazenly while maintaining a facade of humor. De Niro took a deep breath, keeping his voice as calm and professional as possible. "Jimmy, I think we both know I'm here to discuss the film. That's the sole focus of this interview. Personal matters, I believe, should stay private." He spoke slowly, deliberately, each word a firm barrier protecting his personal space. But Kimmel burst into a loud, carefree laugh, slapping his thigh. "Oh, come on, Robert. Why so serious? This is Jimmy Kimmel Live, not a White House press conference, Robert." He used a joking tone, deliberately downplaying the weight of De Niro's words. "We just want a real and open conversation with one of the greatest actors of all time, you know, a little more authentic. The audience at home doesn't want safe answers, Bob. They want to know the real person behind the roles. Don't you agree?" The audience began to sense the tension. Laughter dwindled, replaced by murmurs and whispers. A few people pulled out their phones to record discreetly, sensing something unusual unfolding. De Niro looked at Kimmel, his eyes now much sharper, no longer vague. He met the challenge in Kimmel's gaze head-on. "Look, Jimmy," De Niro began, his voice lower, commanding. "That's exactly how these film promotions work. We agree on topics beforehand, and my personal life, especially ongoing family and legal matters, was explicitly ruled out of discussion. My team had very thorough conversations with your producers about this. I'd expect a professional host to respect those agreements." He wasn't just reiterating the agreement, he was subtly calling out Kimmel's unprofessionalism. Kimmel gave a slight smirk, his smile no longer carefree but openly mocking. He crossed his arms, striking a defiant pose. "Oh, ground rules, huh? Well, Robert, the ground rule of this show is we don't read off pre-written PR scripts. The audience at home doesn't want safe answers. They want to know the real person behind the roles. Are you okay sharing about your new kid? That's gotta be quite an experience at your age, right? Kimmel's words were a direct attack, crossing every line of respect. De Niro felt his final boundary of patience being breached. He maintained his calm, but his eyes turned icy, resolute, unwavering. This was no longer an interview, it was a showdown. "Jimmy," De Niro began, his voice lower, commanding but not harsh, "I've been clear. My personal matters are not up for discussion on live TV. This is a basic agreement made between my team and your producers before I stepped onto this stage. I believe you as a professional host understand and respect that, or at least you should." His final sentence, delivered softly but with immense weight. Kimmel smirked again, his smile now entirely devoid of friendliness, replaced by blatant mockery. He crossed his arms, his eyes challenging De Niro directly. "Oh, ground rules, huh? Well, Robert, the ground rule of this show is we don't read off pre-written PR scripts. The audience at home doesn't want safe answers. They want to know the real person behind the roles. It seems like you're dodging a pretty hot topic. That just makes me and the audience even more curious, Bob." De Niro suppressed a sigh. He glanced around the studio, noting the heavy silence from the audience, who were holding their breath watching the confrontation. Some looked uncomfortable, others were filming, sensing the abnormality. In that moment, De Niro felt not only personally insulted, but that Kimmel was tarnishing the very profession he had dedicated his life to. "I'm not dodging anything, Jimmy," De Niro replied, his tone eerily calm, in stark contrast to Kimmel's provocation. "I'm simply asking for respect for what was agreed upon. Exploiting someone's private life, especially sensitive matters like divorce or family, for controversy and ratings, that's unprofessional and low. I didn't come here to be a prop for your personal drama." Kimmel let out a loud, derisive laugh dripping with contempt. "Low, huh? Robert, this is entertainment. We need content. You're a celebrity, you know how this works. You can't have everything your way. You think you can come onto my show and talk to me like that?" Kimmel's voice rose, leaning forward aggressively. "Do you know who I am? Do you know how this show works?" "Jimmy," De Niro responded, his voice now chillingly cold, each word clear and deliberate. "I've been in this industry long enough to recognize when someone's trying to create chaos out of my personal life just to boost their own name. That might be how you operate, but I won't be a part of it. I don't let anyone exploit me, no one." Kimmel, losing all composure, his face flushed with rage. "What did you say?" he growled, eyes narrowing threateningly. "You think you can come here and criticize me? This is my show. You don't get to do that." He slammed his hand on the desk, the sound echoing sharply in the studio. Just then the commercial break signal lit up. The audience exhaled, but the air remained heavy. Kimmel stayed seated, glaring at De Niro with unmasked hostility. De Niro simply leaned back in his chair, calmly checking his phone. He didn't glance at Kimmel, acting as if he didn't exist. His composure only fueled Kimmel's anger further. The battle, clearly, was just beginning. Backstage, chaos erupted. Kimmel's producers rushed over, panic on their faces. "Jimmy, what are you doing?" one whispered urgently. Kimmel brushed them off, his eyes still locked on De Niro with undisguised hostility. "Who does he think he is?" Kimmel growled, loud enough for those nearby to hear, his face red. "Coming here and lecturing me. I'll show him who runs this show." His voice choked with rage. The producers tried to calm him, but Kimmel was beyond control. When the signal returned, the audience was still holding its breath. The cameras panned back to the stage. Jimmy Kimmel forced a strained smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "All right, sorry folks, and Robert, if I hit a nerve there for a moment. Guess some topics are a bit too sensitive, huh?" he said with a mock apologetic tone, shooting De Niro a challenging glance. "But I bet the audience wants to know. After all, we can't act our whole lives, right, Bob? Everyone's gotta face the truth sometimes." De Niro looked directly at Kimmel. There was no anger in his eyes, only deep disappointment and unyielding resolve. He'd seen enough fake apologies like this. "Jimmy," his voice low and clear, resonating through the studio, I've been in this industry long enough to recognize when someone's trying to create chaos out of my personal life just to boost their own name. That might be how you operate, but I won't be a part of it. I don't let anyone exploit me. No one," he emphasized, a definitive declaration. De Niro's words were like pouring fuel on the fire. Kimmel's face contorted with rage. He slammed his hand on the desk again harder. "What did you say?" Kimmel roared, eyes narrowing threateningly. "You think you can come here and criticize me? You don't get to do that. This is my show. Do you know who I am?" Kimmel stood abruptly, pointing directly at De Niro, his professional facade gone, replaced by raw aggression. The audience began to stir. Some stood, others booed Kimmel in protest. The tension was palpable. This was no longer a light-hearted skit. It was a real confrontation. Robert De Niro remained seated, unmoved. He slowly looked at the finger pointing at him, then raised his eyes to meet Kimmel's. A faint contemptuous smile flickered across his lips, cold and knowing, as if he saw through the weakness and insecurity behind Kimmel's aggression. "I know exactly who you are, Jimmy," De Niro replied, his voice chillingly cold, each word clear and deliberate, echoing through the studio. "The question is, do you know who you are? Because this isn't how a professional behaves, especially one who claims to respect their guests. It only shows your weakness." De Niro's words cut like a knife through Kimmel's pride. His face flushed red, then purple. He gritted his teeth, trembling with rage. "You're done," Kimmel screamed, his voice breaking with fury. "Get off my stage." He spun toward the wings, frantically waving. "Security! Get Mr. De Niro out of this studio now." The director in the control room stared at the monitors, hands shaking. He'd never seen Jimmy Kimmel lose control like this on live TV. Security rushed out, faces stern. De Niro stood calmly. He showed no fear or hesitation. He looked at the approaching guards, then raised a hand to stop them. "No need." His voice steady, surprisingly clear, cutting through the audience's boos. "I can walk myself out." He turned to the audience, offering a warm, genuine smile tinged with regret. "Sorry you all had to see this. Not exactly what any of us expected tonight. But sometimes, dignity matters more than anything else." He waved one last time, his eyes reflecting resolve and a hint of sadness. His steps were measured, full of dignity, unhurried. Robert De Niro turned to face Jimmy Kimmel one final time. His eyes no longer held contempt or disappointment, but an absolute calm, almost pity. He didn't need to say another word to end this confrontation. His presence, his composure in the face of Kimmel's rage, said it all. Kimmel stood frozen, his pointing finger trembling in the air, his face flushed red, then purple, his breathing ragged. He hadn't expected De Niro to remain so calm, and the way De Niro refused security's intervention and apologized to the audience made Kimmel look like the worst kind of villain in the public's eyes. His failure to control the situation, his powerlessness against De Niro's dignity, pushed Kimmel into a frenzy of rage. You, Kimmel stammered, unable to form words. He stared at De Niro, eyes wild with fury. Get out of here. Don't ever show your face on my show again," he screamed, his voice hoarse, pointing toward the wings. His professionalism was gone, replaced by raw desperation. De Niro remained composed. He didn't turn away abruptly, but pivoted slowly, with dignity, heading toward the exit. Each step was deliberate, measured, as if he were walking a red carpet, not being escorted out of a studio. Every stride was a wordless declaration of self-respect and unshakable dignity. The audience's boos against Kimmel grew louder. Shouts of "Jimmy, you're a disgrace," and "De Niro, we're with you," echoed through the space. Many stood, applauding Robert De Niro for his courage in standing up to disrespect. Flashes from hundreds of audience phones lit up, capturing this historic moment from every angle. Kimmel stood frozen on stage, his face twisted with anger and humiliation. He stared at De Niro, unable to believe his eyes. The image of a funny, friendly host he'd spent years building crumbled in minutes. This wasn't just a loss of control, it was a raw exposure of his true character to millions. De Niro reached the edge of the stage, where security stood awkwardly. One tried to approach, but De Niro shook his head, his eyes conveying a clear message. He needed no help or intervention. He would leave on his own terms, letting no one control or dictate his dignity. Before disappearing into the wings, De Niro paused briefly. He turned back, taking in the studio one last time. The audience was still shouting support for him, condemning Kimmel. His eyes swept over Kimmel, who stood motionless, face dark. Finally, De Niro gave a faint, almost imperceptible smile, not malicious, but one of release, tinged with sadness and quiet pride. It was the smile of someone who had won, not with words or violence, but with unwavering integrity. "Goodbye, Jimmy," De Niro said softly, just loud enough for the mic to catch, but it rang like a verdict through the studio. That goodbye wasn't just a farewell, it was an end to any relationship, a statement that there would be no further collaboration. Then he turned fully and stepped into the backstage shadows, leaving the glaring stage lights and the crowd's noise behind. The stage door closed quietly behind him, leaving Jimmy Kimmel alone amid the chaos and the audience's fierce boos. The commercial break music blared abruptly, as if the director had decided to cut to avoid further disaster, but it was too late. On the studio's big screen, De Niro's departure was replaced by the show's logo and colorful ads, a jarring contrast. But no one paid attention to them. The audience's minds were still reeling from what had just happened. The moment a legend was expelled from the stage but left with his head held high and his dignity intact was etched into their memories. The stage door closed behind Robert De Niro, but the storm was just beginning. Immediately, hundreds, then thousands of audience members' phones began uploading raw, unedited clips of the fiery confrontation. Social media erupted. Hashtags Respect De Niro Legend, and Boycott Kimmel shot to the top of global trends within minutes. Audiences not only shared videos, but also posted outraged comments and sharp analyses of Jimmy Kimmel's unprofessionalism and arrogance. The network behind Jimmy Kimmel Live quickly realized the severity of the situation. In the control room, producers' faces were drained of color. They had tried to cut the most tense moments from the live broadcast, but what happened before and after the cuts, along with moments when cameras inadvertently captured Kimmel losing control, had been recorded by the audience and spread online. The raw, unfiltered truth spread faster than any damage control efforts. "What are we going to do?" a senior executive barked over the phone, voice laced with panic. "Jimmy went too far. The footage is out there. There's no covering this up." The network's first attempt was a tepid press release, trying to downplay the incident. They called it an unfortunate misunderstanding between two strong personalities, and claimed they always respect the privacy of our guests. But the public, armed with countless video clips and Kimmel's crude remarks, wasn't buying it. The comments section under the statement turned into a battleground, flooded with criticism and outrage. "Misunderstanding? He calls that a misunderstanding? It was clearly intentional disrespect," one social media user wrote. "De Niro taught Jimmy a lesson in professionalism," another added. Hollywood buzzed with the fallout. Within hours, editors at major entertainment outlets like The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and Deadline were churning out sensational articles. They not only dissected the confrontation but dug into previously untold backstage stories about Kimmel. Former guests who had endured his over-the-line jabs but stayed silent out of fear of being blacklisted now found their voices. A supporting actress, once mocked by Kimmel on air about her outfit, tweeted, "Finally someone had the courage." De Niro didn't just stand up for himself. An anonymous veteran producer told The Hollywood Reporter, "Jimmy's always had this streak. He thinks he can get away with anything for shock value. But this time he hit a steel wall. Bob doesn't bend." These accounts further tarnished Kimmel's image, reinforcing public perceptions of his overbearing nature. De Niro's management team, meanwhile, maintained a stunning silence. No retaliatory statements, no public criticism. This restraint only amplified De Niro's dignity. They let the videos, public comments, and industry testimonials speak for themselves. It was a masterclass in PR, letting the truth speak without embellishment. De Niro's silence was louder than any words, showcasing his superiority and disdain for Kimmel's cheap theatrics. By nightfall, the incident dominated every platform. Late-night news and cable channels ran constant updates, replaying clips and airing expert commentary. The De Niro-Kimmel confrontation transcended a typical entertainment scandal, sparking a broader debate about media ethics, the limits of free speech, and privacy invasion. In one night, Robert De Niro not only defended himself, but became an reluctant hero for a higher principle. The network's executive offices were steeped in a heavy atmosphere. Phones rang incessantly, not with advertisers seeking deals, but with major sponsors like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, and Procter & Gamble announcing withdrawals. Their vague statements about re-evaluating partnerships based on core values were thinly veiled exits from a show mired in an ethical crisis. Jimmy Kimmel Live's ratings plummeted to record lows. A-list stars, the lifeblood of late-night talk shows, began canceling appearances. Their reps cited scheduling conflicts or overlapping commitments, but the subtext was clear. No one wanted to be tainted by the scandal or share a stage with a host who'd lost public respect. Kimmel, once a late-night king, became a pariah. Network executives pressured him to take a week-long leave, a clear move to appease the public. He took the stage with an uncharacteristically somber demeanor, devoid of his usual grin or humor. He opened with what was billed as a sincere apology. "Welcome back to Jimmy Kimmel Live. I know a lot happened last week, and I want to offer my deepest apologies to Robert De Niro, to you, the audience, and to anyone offended by my words during that interview." His voice was flat, his eyes darting to cue cards. "Sometimes in my enthusiasm to bring the most honest conversations, I crossed a line. I've learned a valuable lesson about respect and privacy, but the public rejected the apology outright. Its reluctance, scripted delivery, and lack of genuine remorse made it feel hollow." Many pointed out that Kimmel still tried to justify his actions with phrases like "bringing the most honest conversations," as if blaming his own efforts. Social media continued to lambast him, calling it a staged PR stunt to salvage his crumbling career. While Kimmel grappled with his self-inflicted storm, Robert De Niro carried himself differently. Days after the incident, he attended a pre-scheduled charity event as the guest of honor. Facing a sea of reporters, he didn't shy away but addressed them calmly. Not a single direct jab at Kimmel was uttered. Instead, De Niro spoke about the importance of respect and principles. "In life, as in art, respect is foundational," De Niro said, his voice warm and weighty, resonating through the hall. "Everyone has bad days, but I believe when you invite someone into your space, whether it's a home or a show, a certain level of respect must be maintained. When boundaries are set, they should be honored. That's all I was standing for. It's not about personal grudges, it's about principles, about standing up for core values." He looked directly into the cameras, his gaze steady, delivering a powerful and meaningful message. Following the event, rival talk shows swiftly extended invitations to De Niro. He accepted a few, where he was treated with utmost respect. Hosts focused on his film, his craft, and his contributions to cinema, steering clear of personal matters. These interviews were praised for their professionalism and depth, standing in stark contrast to his Jimmy Kimmel Live experience. De Niro's calm professionalism and dignity during and after the incident solidified his status as an icon of not just art, but ethics and integrity. The impact went beyond ratings or sponsorship deals, touching core values of ethics and respect in media. For Jimmy Kimmel, this was a stain on his career that would be hard to erase. Though he continued hosting, the shine of being a beloved funny host had dimmed significantly. Audiences and industry insiders now viewed Kimmel differently, with skepticism and caution. Rumors of his overbearing nature and backstage disrespect toward guests were now validated and public. His show was forced to adopt a safer, more professional format, losing the spontaneity and boldness that had been its trademark. His career would likely never regain its former heights. In contrast, Robert De Niro solidified his status not only as a great actor, but as a man of dignity. His actions on air weren't impulsive or driven by personal anger, but a clear statement of principle. He proved that even in Hollywood's glitzy, compromise-filled world, some values remain untouchable. De Niro inspired other artists who had silently endured privacy invasions to stand up for themselves. He became an emblem of integrity and courage in the face of power and disrespect. The incident also sparked a broader debate in the media industry. Press conferences and seminars were held to discuss interview ethics, the limits of exploiting celebrities' personal lives, and the responsibilities of broadcasters. Journalism and media schools used the De Niro-Kimmel incident as a case study for what to do and what not to do on air. Many talk shows, especially late-night ones, had to reevaluate scripts, guest conduct policies, and contract terms. They realized that chasing ratings at all costs, disregarding respect, might yield short-term gains but catastrophic long-term consequences. To this day, the story of Robert De Niro and Jimmy Kimmel remains a touchstone. It's a powerful testament that sometimes silence and dignity carry more weight than words, and that a legend is defined not just by their on-screen roles, but by how they live and stand up for their beliefs. De Niro left a legacy not only in cinema but in the very concept of integrity and respect in an increasingly noisy and rushed world. The confrontation between Robert De Niro and Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just a shocking live TV moment, but a sharp reflection of the challenges and values in today's American society. The story, with Kimmel's deliberate invasion of De Niro's privacy regarding his divorce and newborn child, and De Niro's resolute defense of his personal boundaries, offers profound lessons applicable to real life. The story underscores the importance of respecting personal boundaries and privacy, a core value in America. In a society where information spreads rapidly, and social media often blurs the line between public and private, De Niro's incident is a stark reminder. When Kimmel deliberately brought up De Niro's messy divorce and newborn child, it wasn't just unprofessional but a serious breach of privacy. The lesson is clear. Whether in the workplace or personal relationships, setting and respecting boundaries is paramount. No one has the right to pry into or exploit another's personal life for curiosity or gain, whether they're a star or an ordinary person. Second, the story demonstrates the power of dignity and integrity under pressure. De Niro, despite being a major star, didn't choose silence or capitulation. He stood up, calmly but firmly, calling out Kimmel's unprofessionalism and low motives. "I don't let anyone exploit me." No one. This declaration from De Niro was a powerful affirmation of self-worth. In American society, where pressure to perform or appease others can be immense, holding firm to one's principles, even under attack or temptation, is vital. Finally, the incident is a lesson in the responsibility of wielding influence. Jimmy Kimmel, as a host with a powerful platform, abused his authority to create drama. The consequence was severe damage to his career and reputation. This shows that whether you're a celebrity, a business, or an individual on social media, using your voice and platform must come with accountability. Violating ethics for short-term gain leads to a loss of trust from the community, a damage hard to repair. The story of Robert De Niro's dignity and principles has concluded, but its lessons about respect in life and media endure. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on insightful analyses about Hollywood and the world around us. Thank you for joining us on this journey to explore meaningful stories, and we'll see you in the next video.